"I don't think this is going to work," shouted Rushlight. He was en route with his old friend Mr. Brown on a cart borrowed from the Badgers. Rushlight was pedalling the bicycle, propelling the cart as hard as he could, but it wasn't moving. "We're running late," Mr. Brown called out, sitting back on the cart holding on to his fedora. "We should probably call for help." "There's no one around for miles," Rushlight said, exhausted. "Then we've got to call some attention to ourselves," Mr. Brown said, and yelled, "Hello? Anybody out there?" There was no answer, but suddenly a strong wind blew up, taking Mr. Brown's hat along in the process and leaving it somewhere up in the branches. The chubby mouse wistfully watched his headpiece disappear. "My apologies," the wind said from some distance away. Then it turned and approached the mice in a wide curve. As it got closer, it took on the shape of an elderly wizard. An elderly wizard floating along with a beaver on his shoulder and a squirrel at his side. At this sight, Mr. Brown put his paw to the spot where his hat had just been. The wizard looked up and hovered straight to the treetops, slowly spinning. He collected Mr. Brown's fedora from between the branches and then descended slowly to the ground. "Here you are," the wizard said, handing Mr. Brown his hat. "Much appreciated," Mr. Brown replied. "Are you going to the exhibition?" he asked, pointing at the wizard's case. One corner of the envelope was poking out, enough to give Mr. Brown a clue as to where they were heading. "Indeed we are. You, however, seem to be suffering some difficulties and are now worried you may be late, I assume," the wizard said, pointing to the cart stuck in the muddy forest earth. Stuck deep enough to tell the wizard Mr. Brown and Rushlight needed help. Unlike Mr. Brown, the wizard usually needed more than just one clue to solve problems the classical way, in other words, without magic. In this case, though, he was right first time. "Your assumption is correct," Mr. Brown answered. "Well, you're welcome to travel with us," the wizard offered. "We still have some room." He lifted Mr. Brown onto his right shoulder and helped Rushlight to climb up the wooden case. The brawny mouse greeted Edward with a firm handshake. "Name's Rushlight," he said. "Good day," replied Edward. The wizard accelerated again, and, together with the post office beaver, Edward, Mr. Brown, and Rushlight, he floated on to Marigold Meadows. There are so many animals in Mousewood that a mighty wizard wanting to attend an exhibition has to expect to give some of them a lift. A great many animals had already gathered at Marigold Meadows, excitedly waiting for the Art Society exhibition. On the grass stood dozens of easels, still covered in white linen to make the grand opening even more exciting. Dressed in an elegant black suit, Mr. Ludwig Mole nervously checked his pocket watch. Only a few more minutes until he was supposed to hold the opening speech. It was only a few lines long, but he had practiced it several times nonetheless. With a speech only a couple of lines long, it would be especially embarrassing to fluff or forget something. Ludwig looked around, somewhat disoriented. "Nicholas?" he asked, tapping the shoulder of a guest next to him. This was in fact Plato the Frog, who at least resembled Nicholas in terms of colour. To Ludwig, Plato, however, was an amorphous shade, while Nicholas was more of a blurred, slender line. "Yes?" said Plato. The frog was just talking to Jonas the otter about a song he'd heard recently. "Oh, you're not Nicholas, no," Ludwig concluded in confusion. "He's right over there," Jonas said. "Nicholas!" he shouted, beckoning to his fellow musician. The lizard walked over. Jonas pointed to the mole and then continued his conversation with Plato. "Showtime, I think?" Nicholas asked his friend Ludwig. "Ah, there you are. Yes, we're about to start," Ludwig replied, calmly, now that his good friend was there. "Break a leg," Nicholas said, slapping the mole on the back. Ludwig took a deep breath and started walking through the audience. On the way, he accidentally bumped into one of the wood dwarves, who was talking to Peter the Badger and his wife. "Oi, watch it," said Logger the wood dwarf. "I'm sure it was an accident," said the badger lady, trying to calm him down. "Accident? commented Steinberg. Ludwig was far too busy to notice what was going on around him. He eventually reached the podium and took off his glasses, polishing them with a handkerchief. Then he gave the audience time to quieten down and prepare for the speech. Soon the animals and a wood sprite fell silent in anticipation. Ludwig's wife was in the front row, quietly applauding to reassure her husband. "Dear guests, it is a great pleasure to welcome all of you tonight here at Marigold Meadows," Ludwig began, but was immediately interrupted by the muffled boom of approaching thunder. The guests turned in the direction the sound was coming from. In a cloud of dust and leaves, the wizard appeared from the forest, coming to an abrupt landing right in front of the astonished visitors. As the dust settled, he set down the beaver, Mr. Brown, Rushlight, and Edward the squirrel. At once Edward ran to his friends Oswald and Edgar, who had arrived half an hour before. The others joined the animals in the audience, and, as the excitement wore off, Ludwig continued. "The Mousewood Art Society proudly and for the first time presents the work of an artist, a resident of Mousewood like all of us here. His paintings, completed over recent years, depict the forest from various points of view, and of course the perspective of the artist himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the exhibition open." The first story.
Okay, so there you go. Nope, can't see my voice. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay, there we go. So, that's the end of the Mousewood Stories, and that's the end of this game and stream. Check out my Twitch for live streams, check out my Twitter for channel updates and stream notifications, and check out my YouTube for edited VODs coming out whenever I feel like editing and uploading. So everyone, have a good night. I'll be back. Should be back. Let me check the schedule real quick. Yeah, I have it recorded somewhere. OneNote. So I should be back on Monday. Or maybe not. I might do a stream on Monday, I might not, but I'll definitely be doing one on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Maybe Friday too. And I'm expecting Saturday to be a multiplayer stream, like the most important one of the year. Hopefully we can get this scheduled and worked out. Okay, everyone have